Yo, what's good? We back at it. This your boy Sid. We had to follow through with another video. The title of this video is going to be on day versus nighttime charts and finding out which planets are on your team, as well as the areas in your chart that can indicate where you may have more blessings and strengths as opposed to weaknesses or challenges in this lifetime. So this is a Hellenistic astrology concept, right? And in Hellenistic astrology, we have 7 planets that are used and use whole sign houses in the system. So you won't be using Placidus or any other systems basically in terms of drawing up your charts. So as you see, if you look over here at the left bottom corner, you have the day team, right? This consists of the sun, Jupiter, Saturn, right? And then on the bottom right corner, you have the nighttime team, and this consists of the planets that are the moon, Venus, and Mars. Now, one thing to note is that Mercury won't be included on any of the 2 teams, right? And another thing to note is that each team will have a certain luminary that belongs to it. It would also have a benefic planet that belongs to it, and it will have one malefic planet that belongs to it. So the planets that belong to each team will be known as the SECT planets, basically, or basically the planets that are in your section or on your team, right? So let me break this down a little further. For the day team, which again we have at the left bottom corner, the sun will be the luminary for the day team, right? If you have a daytime chart. And in a few, I'll show you how to find out if you have a daytime chart or nighttime chart. Jupiter is also going to be what's known as the insect benefic planet, or the benefic planet that's on your team. And then Saturn is known as your insect malefic planet. And it's going to give you a bit of a less challenge, even though it's still going to give you challenges in terms of the house that it's in your chart. But it's going to give you less of a challenge than Mars, basically, because Mars is what's known as your out of sect malefic, meaning that it's not on your team, so it gives daytime people's charts a bit more of a challenge by house that it's in. Now, let's go to the nighttime chart. So if you have a nighttime chart, right, the moon is going to be your luminary, and it's said that you would actually express your personality more so through the moon for people with nighttime charts as opposed to the sun, right? And then Venus is going to be your insect benefic planet, which brings you gifts and strengths by house that it's in. And Mars is going to be your insect malefic planet. And for a nighttime chart, Saturn will be or tend to bring more challenges because it's the malefic that's not on your team, aka the outer sect malefic, right? So follow along. So the first thing you got to do in order to find out if you have a daytime or nighttime chart is you need to look to see where your sun is located, right? So you want to look to see if it's above the horizon or below the horizon. Now, the horizon, we could say the horizon would be the line where you have the ascendant axis and the descendant axis, right? And if your sun is above the horizon, in terms of this line right here, then you would have a daytime chart. Now, if your sun is below the horizon in any of these other houses, you would be considered having a nighttime chart. And I'm going to explain the difference between the two. I'll give some examples. So, for instance, the horizon, which is the ascendant and descendant axis, is always going to be anywhere at any degree between the first house, and this would be for the ascendant, and then you have the descendant line, which will range anywhere between the 7th house in terms of by degree. So you also have what's known as floating points, which is the MC and the IC. And I did forget to mention that the ascendant axis point, or the ascendant and the descendant axis point or descendant, is also known as a part of the floating points. So all 4 of these collective points are known as floating points or floating angles. Now also the MC is the medium coli, which is known as the top of the heavens. The medium coli deals with your career and reputation, and this will range anywhere from houses 12 to 7. So that would be basically your MC, as opposed to, like, say in Placidus, it would just be on the 10th house cusp. But for instance, in whole sign systems in Hellenistic astrology, it could range and be anywhere between the 12th house, it could be in the 11th house, the 10th house, the 9th house, the 8th house, and the 7th house. So just keep that in mind. And then the IC, which deals with like home and family, also known as the Imam Coli, can range anywhere between the 1st house and the 6th house, right? So this can be, for instance, in this 1st house, the 2nd house, the 3rd house, 4th, 5th, 6th, basically, right? So now the ascendant and descendant lines are always going to be opposite of each other, and at the same degree in each of the opposite signs. Like in this example right here, we have Aries and we put it at 20 degrees as an example. So then that would mean that the descendant line for the horizon would basically be on the opposite, which is Libra, opposite sign at 20 degrees. And then also for the MC, it's always going to be in the opposite or opposed wherever the IC is at, and vice versa, right? So in this example, we might put the MC in, let's say, the 11th house at 5 degrees, and the 11th house in Aquarius, and then the IC would range and be in the 5th house, basically in the sign of Leo, which is opposite of that, right, at the same degree. So now we're going to start with a daytime chart example, and then after that we'll go to the nighttime chart example. So in this daytime chart example, let's say that the sun was at 15 degrees in Aquarius. So as we see, the sun is at 15 degrees in Aquarius in the 11th house. This means that the sun is above the horizon, also known as the ascendant and descendant axis, which again is at 20 degrees Aries and 20 degrees Libra. So since the sun is above the horizon, this means that this is a daytime chart, and this also means that Jupiter would be on your team and Saturn. Those are the planets that would be on your team. So it's said that in a daytime team's chart, Jupiter is the planet that will bring you the most blessings. So for instance, let's say that Jupiter was in your 9th house in the sign of Sagittarius at 15 degrees, which we see right here. This means that 9th house, normally 9 times out of 10, a place where you're going to have more blessings and strengths in your life in terms of the topics that are related to the 9th house. Now I have a video that I'll link right here where I explained what each house represents in astrology, and you can go to that video if you need further indications of what the houses may represent. So it's also said in Hellenistic astrology that the signs that are ruled by Jupiter, which is Sagittarius and Pisces, are also additional areas where you may have more blessings at too. Of course, this is a case-by-case basis. Nothing in astrology is going to be 100%, as everybody's chart is a bit different and you have other factors that can range in to change the story. But just in general, it's said that, for instance, in this example, since Sag is on the 9th house, again, this person will have blessings here, as well as Pisces in the 12th house. So these themes, these topics will be blessings for this individual. Now, say if somebody was a Pisces rising or Sagittarius rising, as an example, that would mean that Pisces or Sag is in the 1st house. So this can give more blessings to the physical body, which is what the 1st house can represent in terms of some of the themes. Now, since Saturn is also in your team and it's a malefic planet, it's going to give you some challenges, but it may not be as challenging as your out of SECT malefic planet, which would be Mars. So let's say in this example, we have Mars at 7 degrees in Libra, right? Since it's your out of SECT malefic, again, meaning it's not on your team, the 7th house, which is where Mars is located, as you see right here, is going to give you more of a challenge. So this is the house of partnerships, relationships, whether it be business, marriage, or just relationships in general, one-on-one relationships. It's said that this person will have more challenges. And of course, same thing, just like Jupiter, I would say that the signs that Mars rules over, which is Aries and Scorpio, the houses that they're on will give you more challenges. So for this example, we see that Aries is ruling over the 1st house and Scorpio is ruling over the 8th house. So it's said that these two areas will give you challenges too, if this were your chart as an example. Now, one thing I'd also like to note is that you have houses that are stronger than other houses in terms of house strength, right? So we have what's known as angular houses, we have succedent houses, and we have cadent houses. Now, the angular houses are going to be the strongest in terms of if you have any planets in these houses, they'll be felt stronger, right? Whether it be for the positive or for the negative. The angular houses would be houses 1, houses 4, houses 7, and houses 10. After that, you have what's known as the succedent houses, right? These will be not as strong as the angular houses, but they'll have certain level of strength to them, right? So this is the 2nd house, this is the 5th house, this is the 8th house, and this is the 11th house. And then following that, you have what's known as the cadent houses. These are the weakest in terms of strength, right? So if planets are in these houses, you'll probably feel them the least amount, basically. So for instance, the 3rd house, the 6th house, the 9th house, and the 12th house are cadent houses. Again, planets there will be felt not as strong as angular and cadent houses, right? So ideally, let's say if we had a malefic planet, we would want them to be in these houses that are cadent, so they wouldn't be as strong, basically, in terms of the themes. Now, let's go back. We said that, for instance, in this chart example, Mars was in the 7th house, right? So this is an angular house. Since it's in an angular house, and we also see that Mars is ruling over Aries in the 1st house, these are both angular houses. So the topics of relationships, which is the 7th house where Mars is at, and then also where Aries is at, the 1st house of the body, there may be some challenges there with the physical body going on. We also see that Mars is in its sign of detriment, right? Because Mars belongs to Aries and it's in the opposite sign of Libra, where it doesn't do as well in. So we know that this is also further challenging Mars. Now, I told you guys that Scorpio is the other sign that Mars rules over. It's in the 8th house. So I would say that the angular houses where Aries is at and where Mars is at in the 7th house would actually be stronger 9 times out of 10 than where Scorpio's at in the 8th house and topics of the 8th house, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, we also did say that your insect malefic planet Saturn would still give challenges, but again, it wouldn't be as strong as Mars. Now, let's say we have Saturn in the sign of Cancer at 17 degrees. Now, Saturn we see is in a sign of detriment, as it literally doesn't do well in Cancer. Reason being is because it belongs to Capricorn, which is the opposite sign, which is in the 10th house over here in this chart example. So we know that Saturn's in a sign of detriment, so it would give some challenges, but again, it wouldn't be normally as strong as where Mars is at in Aries and Scorpio. So yeah, this is an example of a daytime chart. Now let's go to an example of a nighttime chart. So in this example, we're going to say that we have, let's say the sun was in the sign of Taurus, right? Let's say Taurus at 17 degrees, right? So that means that it's in the 2nd house, which you can see right here. And also we see that this is below the horizon, the ascendant and descendant axis. So that means that this is a nighttime chart, right? Because it's not above the horizon. As you all know, if you look again to your right bottom corner, this means that for a nighttime chart, the moon is your insect luminary. And what did we say a little earlier? We also said that nighttime charts, the person's personality is more so expressed through the moon as opposed to the sun in a nighttime chart. So the moon is on your team again. This is your luminary of your team. Then you also have Venus, which is your insect benefic planet, and then you have Mars, which is your insect malefic planet. So let's continue, right? This person has the moon and Leo at 23 degrees in the 5th house. So they'll express themselves somewhat like a Leo, maybe more so than the sun sign and Taurus. And another thing we would say is that their insect planet is Venus, right? Now we see that we have Venus at 10 degrees in the 3rd house in Gemini. So it's said that this is a house where this person can receive blessings or strengths. Now the 3rd house is the house of communication. It's the house of your thinking, writing. It's your neighborhood, your neighbors. And it also represents your siblings, right? Your siblings and your relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, things of that nature. So there can be possibly some blessings in this area. Now since Venus rules over the sign of Taurus, which is in the 2nd house, and also it rules over the sign of Libra, it said that, again, 3rd house themes, 2nd house themes, and 7th house themes, there could be some blessings there in this example, right? So I would arguably say that since Libra is ruling an angular house, right, possibly in this chart example, unlike the other one, relationships, 7th house themes or relationships can be actually a blessing for this individual because it's an angular house, so it could be felt stronger in this house. Let's go to your out of SECT malefic planet, which is Saturn, right? Saturn will give you more of a challenge, basically, right? Saturn will give you more challenges, things that we have to work through in this lifetime. So let's say that Saturn, in this example, was in your 6th house, basically, all right? Let's say 6th house at 18 degrees. So this is the house of coworkers, work, daily routines, health, right? So there may be some challenges in this area, basically, right? And that's because it's your out of SECT malefic planet. Now we know Mars, wherever Mars is placed, is going to give you challenges, but Saturn more so because it's not on your team. Now Saturn, in this example, is ruling over the 10th house, right, of career, public reputation, status, right? And Saturn is also ruling over the 11th house, which is Aquarius, is right there. It rules over Capricorn and Aquarius. So 11th house is the house of friendships, hopes, wishes, goals, aspirations, right? Your community as well too. So there may be some challenges in these areas. If I had to probably guess, I would say probably, of course, excuse me, the Angler house where career is at, that would definitely stand out. I would think, you know what I mean. But also, the sixth house too, since it's actually deposited in that house. Now Mars, let's say in this example, fourth house, right? Let's say Mars is in the fourth house in Cancer. Mars would still give you challenges, but it's on your team, so it'll be less, of course, than Saturn. Mars, we know, actually falls in Cancer, so this is kind of emphasizing this theme, as it's debilitated in this sign, right? So we know that, of course, they still would have some challenges here. But this is just an example, yeah. So this is the difference between daytime and nighttime charts. I hope this video was very useful too. You know what I mean? I hope that you learned something from it. I try not to make this video too long, but if I did, excuse me for it. And we're gonna continue with more videos. Again, like, subscribe. Make sure you share this video with anybody that you know that's into astrology, and comment below any of your thoughts. Let me know what you think of the video, and I appreciate you all. Thanks.